The final blow offered there by the Philadelphia Eagles. The final word for us offered by NFL insider Jonathan Jones. JJ, with a intimate experience here on the tail end of yet another Super Bowl. Tell me some of what you've seen over this last couple hours.
Well, I won't tell you just what I've seen. I'll tell you what I have smelled. As soon as I walked into the winner's locker room, you couldn't mistake it. There were a number of victory cigars that had been lit and would be lit. Jalen Hurts taking a little bit to get his victory cigar. Well-deserved one for the Super Bowl MVP lit, but man, it was obviously a well-deserved cigar for him. They were spraying the Ace of Spades. They were playing a whole lot of rap music that me, at this point in my life, don't really know off the top of my head, but man, they were having a lot of fun. Howie Roseman traipsing around the locker room. He didn't want to do any interviews with anyone. He didn't really want to be stopped by any media members. He just wanted to enjoy it with his guys. And one of the really interesting things, Joe, that happened, you know, Jalen Hurts, he was late to the locker room because of all of his media obligations as Super Bowl MVP. And he comes into the locker room and he just keeps doing laps around, making sure that he is dapping up every single player, every single scout, personnel guy who is there to make sure that they appreciated, that he appreciated what they were doing, that of course, you know, they all felt that this was a team. And of course, that's what he does as a leader of this group. That was a really cool moment. Something like this is always the completion of a marathon. And I only offer that because I'm always very impressed by your endurance as well. You go to all 32 teams during summer and you stopped at Philadelphia. Can you hearken back to what you saw then and what you see now? Are those two things that reconcile with one another? Well, what you saw was the incredible amount of talent. What you saw was that, like, this team, it wasn't, if it didn't get here, it was because of a rash of injuries or is because they got in their own way like we saw at the end of last season. Remember how they started so well and then obviously crashed out there in the final 6 or so games of the season. They learned, of course, from that. Nick Sirianni learned from that, tweaked so much of his leadership, and Jalen Hurts had to learn something for himself as well. But, of course, there was the key addition of Saquon Barkley, someone who, yeah, you know, he looks great out there at training camp, and all the fans were yelling his name at the preseason game at Lincoln Financial Field, but until you saw him on the field, until you saw what a difference maker he was for this team, and then, you know, they struggled a little bit, some of the egos, I think, the ball not being thrown in the air as much for part of the season, but they understood what they were doing, what it took to win football games. And as they all got behind Saquon Barkley on his march to the single-season rushing record, coming up just a little bit short, they knew that they would be led by him. And so much pressure was taken off of Jalen Hurts. And what I saw throughout all of January into February was a quarterback who was throwing the ball as well as I've ever seen him throw the football. So you ask if I could have seen this coming at the start of the year. Yeah, probably, because of the difference maker they had at running back and what that meant, the sort of domino effect for the rest of the players in this season. All requiring elite execution, and that they gave until the final moments of this season. We expect that sort of execution from the two-time reigning defending champions. We did not get that here in Super Bowl 59. Broader strokes, this has been quite a 3-year stretch for Kansas City, and that is a vast understatement. What is it going to require of them to get back up off the mat and try and make this climb again after a loss like this? Yeah, look, it's going to be hard because the more talented team won out here tonight, right? Outside of the quarterback position, outside of the head coach position, you're not going to hear much of an argument about any sort of position group for the Kansas City Chiefs that's better than the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's a credit to what Howie Roseman, the general manager, has been able to do in Philadelphia, sort of creating, reinventing, inventing again this entire offense and defense, right? Standing behind Nick Sirianni when there were so many calls for his head, right? And so what do the Kansas City Chiefs need? Well, they're probably going to need Travis Kelce to come back. And look, these are really hard training camps that Andy Reid puts his team through. They are a huge reason why they always end up playing in February. But when you are a veteran like Travis Kelce and many other veterans, you wonder, well, you know, in St. Joseph, Missouri, in that heat in July and August, is that really where I want to be? And so that's what they're going to have to do and understand that that is what it requires. Hopefully they get him there. They're going to have to figure out the left tackle position. There's no doubt or question about that. And so after that, they're going to probably want to get a little bit better defensively as well. Nick Bolton's going to be up. Can they get a little more pass rush outside of Chris Jones? All of those things are going to be coming up for the Kansas City Chiefs because, again, they need more talent. We just saw out here. And look, they're going to get Rashee Rice back. Hopefully Hollywood Brown comes back even better. Xavier Worthy another year in the system. But they're going to have to get more talent almost across the board for them to be able to compete night in, night out, or 10 games out of 10 with a group like the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I have a hard time putting any doubt at the feet of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but this is a group that was at a talent deficit, obviously, on this field between these two teams. We'll see what they come back with, as they now have that taste of defeat once again in their mouth. JJ, it's hard to boil down these experiences, these seasons to single moments, but I'm interested, having experienced so much this year, is there a lasting image in your mind right now?
You know what? I'll give you the lasting image because a lot of folks said, man, this kind of feels like Super Bowl 55. This feels like Tampa Bay and Kansas City. And what I remember from that game was an offensive line that let down Patrick Mahomes, who was putting out all-pro MVP-like performances that he just couldn't, will the ball into the end zone. Here in this game, that was completely different. Everyone was overwhelmed, including the young GOAT, Patrick Mahomes. I talked with Vic Fangio after the game, who he did not have to blitz Patrick Mahomes until late in the game when the game was already in hand. When I came down to go ahead and prepare for what was certainly going to be a Philadelphia Eagles victory celebration, they had 0 blitzes so far, the Philadelphia Eagles did. And so that's what's incredible, is that they didn't have to pressure him to get home. And that's what's going to speak to me this offseason, is that these are 2 of the top 4 or 5 teams in terms of talent, in terms of coaching, in terms of quarterback. Everyone's going to have to try to keep up with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. What will the Chiefs do to try to get back out in the winner's circle? Because they just got shown in front of all of our eyes that they aren't talented enough against a group. They don't even have to blitz. So that's going to be the lasting impression for me, is what's going to happen over these next 5 months of this offseason so that the Kansas City Chiefs can go back and get another Lombardi.
No games for a little bit, but there's no offseason in the life of an insider. Jonathan Jones, we always appreciate your work. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
All right, here's a look at your longest playoff win streaks in NFL history. 10 in a row for those Pats. This was also on the line on Sunday. Not just a three-peat, but level footing with those Patriots. Instead, it stops at 9. Reset the counter. The Chiefs not going anywhere.